All right, I'm going to go share my screen.
Okay, ready when you are.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Carrie Mocyk. I'm one of the instructional designers on campus. Today's session is going to be different for sure, but we're going to talk about the gradebook and see if we can kind of wrap our head around how the gradebook functions. The reason this session came about is because much like many of the tools that we use, Microsoft Word every day or have in the past. And we use these different tools, but we may not be using them in the most efficient way or effective way. And so I wanted to kind of take some time and kind of give some behind the scenes information about how the gradebook actually works in Brightspace. So hopefully when you come across these situations, you'll have a better understanding of why, things like you can't delete a gradebook column or something is not showing visible to the students or, something gets screwed up. So this is what this session is going to be about, but I recognize it's different. So if we need to slow down, I give you permission to let me know that because I know that this is coming from a different lens. Okay. Little disclosure. We're going to lay the foundation first, followed by a demo. For today, we're just going to focus on assignments for all of our conversations. However, everything that I'm saying is true for assignments, discussions, and quizzes. This is an advanced user session, just assuming that you've used Brightspace, the gradebook, created an assignment in some capacity along the way. Okay, so kind of going along with this disclosure, there are three areas that we're going to focus on. And the first one is going to be content, and that's where the students are interacting with the course materials. And I'll call it content when I'm talking. So when I'm talking content, I'm talking about the content area that the students are interacting. And then we have course tools assignments. So if you hear me talk about course tools, I'm shortening that to say course tools assignments, okay? That you're going to go look at your list of assignments and you're going to make an edit there. And then when we're talking about grades, I'm probably going to be talking about the manage grade screen, but I just want to kind of talk about those three areas and I'll just show you them real quick where we are. Um, so content, if I am talking about creating assignments, I am talking about using this existing activity assignments and sharing an assignment here, linking an assignment into this section. All right. And then when I'm in course tools and I go to assignments, I'm talking about you going in to edit your assignment and making whatever update I'm suggesting. Okay, so if I say course tools assignments, I'm assuming you're going to go to this screen here and make your changes. And then the last one with the course tools grades, we go into manage grades. And again, I'm assuming that you're going to make whatever edits I'm suggesting on this page here, and I'll show you how to do all that. But I do want you to kind of have that visual of what I'm talking about before we continue on so that um, uh, hopefully it makes a little more sense. All right, so how assignments flow in Brightspace. The first scenario is when you go to course tools and assignments and you create the assignment. This is the preferred method. When you do that, the assignment is going to show up and it's going to be listed in course tools assignments. It's going to show up there. It's only going to show up in the grades. It's only going to have a gradebook column if you complete that step. And it's only going to show up in content if you use that existing activities that I just shared. So many times people will know to create the assignment in course tools and assignment, but they forget to share it over in content or they forget to add it to the gradebook. So there's really three pieces that you need to be aware of if you're going to use this method. It is the preferred method and I'll explain why in just a minute. The next one is if you're in the content section, this area where the students interact with it, and you create an assignment from there. So what that's going to do is immediately make it the assignment available for content. It's going to be in content so the students can see it. It will show up in your course tools and your list of all of your assignments, but you still do need to make sure that you complete the step that make it show up in the gradebook. All right. So at the beginning, this sounds like this would be more user-friendly to create it here. You can create it here, but when we get to making changes, you don't want to make it from this page. All right, so when we're talking about linking it to the gradebook, I am now in this course tools assignments. And this is what I'm talking about. So whenever I reference a link to the gradebook, I'm talking about having this out of 20 points, whatever you have here. And then in here, it's in the gradebook. If you take a look, let's see. If I were to edit one of these, it's automatically set to not in the gradebook. So you could put your points in, but unless you actually click on this to add it to the gradebook, it's still not going to be in the gradebook. Okay, so that is one piece that does get missed as you're getting started. I'm going to show you more details about that in a little bit. All right, and I actually showed this to you just a second ago. So if you create your assignment using Course Tools assignments, your next step would be to go over to content and make it so that the students can see it. So the way I kind of describe it is like, course tools is all like you're behind the scenes. It's your My Documents of your course. Students don't get to see that component. If they're accessing it, it's because they figured out the way, usually through the calendar, is how they're accessing it if you forgot to have it inside of your content. But if you want it inside of, to share it with the students inside the content, you would do exactly what I was showing on the screen just a moment ago, using existing activities, assignments, to add that to your module. And just a little bit of visual, recommended starting point, course tools assignments, add it to content, and make sure it's added. Those are the three things that you're constantly looking for to make sure that those things happened when you're creating new materials. Okay, so getting to know Manage Grades. Manage Grades is really helpful, but there's a lot to it, and we're going to try to sort through some of this stuff. So to get to Manage Grades, you go to Course Tools and then Grades, and to Manage Grades. There are two different types of grade books. We have the weighted grade book, which is difficult to see on my screen. Let's see if I can do better for you. Here's one here. You'll know it's a weighted grade book a couple different ways. It talks about the weight in this column here. If it was points, it would say points. If you wanted to confirm, you could use the setup wizard, and the first step is going to tell you how it's currently set up. If you want to change that, you can, but it tells you what how it's set right now. And I'll get out of that. So that's the weighted grade book. And actually, I'll show a little bit more. In the weighted grade book, you commonly have these categories. So the participation is worth a certain amount. Your assignments are worth a certain amount, say 20% of the final grade. Within the categories, the categories are this light blue kind of color. Anything that's nested inside is part of that category. Now in this example here, this is a a bonus activity. So we're giving them extra credit on top of their final score to if they did above and beyond for the course, and the professor wanted to do that. So otherwise, weighted grade books, they have these categories. Anything that's nested inside of it is going to be indented. That's how you know it's in the right spot. Okay. Let's keep going. Now in the points-based, you can still have categories like this picture shows. Sorry that it's small, but you'll see the light blue categories. The difference is this last column, it's the points. It's the total points of for your course. Across the top, if your gradebook is not properly calculating, you're going to get these notes. And if you see these notes, more often than not, it means there's a problem. And there are times that there are recommendations. There might be instances where you are using some bonus or purposely not calculating something into the gradebook yet, or there's definitely circumstances where a note may sit there for the semester, but if there is one, you need to rule out that there's, that it's meant to be there, that it's okay that it's there. It's that you are manipulating the grade book in a way that Brightspace doesn't like. However, the math still works to keep an accurate score for the students. That's the most important. So if you see these notes on top, it probably means that at minimum, you need to look deeper into what's going on to figure out what the issue is. And we'll talk about more of that in a moment too. All right, one thing about the Manage Grades page. Manage Grades is all about the columns of the gradebook and how it gets calculated into your gradebook. It is not about the assignments. And I'll talk about that more in a second, why that's so important. But if you think of Manage Grades, you should think of the columns of the gradebook. The gradebook category is necessary for weighted gradebooks, but they could be used in point gradebooks for organization purposes. If the association column is filled in, it's tied to an assignment. I forgot to show you that. I'll show you that. And then if you're using any categories, anything that's within the category will be indented. And Manage Grades is a great place to look to identify gradebook issues. So let me just show you where the association column is. So this column here, this association, if it is filled in, it's telling me that it is tied to an assignment. All right, could be any assignment, or in this case, it's a discussion, but if this column is filled in, it is tied to something inside of the course. If you found yourself in a situation where you can't delete a column out of the gradebook, it is probably because this column is filled in. So we're going to talk more about that and the steps to delete out material. But it's really important, this association column, that's how you know whether or not you can or can't delete something from the gradebook. All right, and then just in advanced information, it's possible to create attendance or extra credit points. So like if you want to give them some participation, anything like that, it could be bonus, it could be just a column where you manually add to say that they were there. In the categories, you can drop the lowest grade. So if you have 10 different quizzes and you wanted to drop the lowest 1, 2, 3, doesn't matter, you can create a category and drop that lowest grade. You do have the ability to do the create complete, not complete. I think they just changed the wording on that, but it is a pass or fail or something like that that tells you that it's been done, not done, something like that. But that is an option when you're creating a manual column in the gradebook. And then I was talking, the notes should be reviewed when identifying errors. And here's a big one. Hiding gradebook columns is rarely recommended. So if you are in manage grades and you're hiding a column, that's probably not the right thing to be doing unless you really know what you're talking about and comfortable in using Brightspace. Hiding the assignment is typical. That's common. You go to Course Tools, Assignments, you hide the assignment so students can't see it. But hiding the gradebook column, there's very specific use cases for that, but it's rarely recommended. Okay, so if the association column is filled in, you can delete the column. That is a myth. Fact, you must unattach the assignment from the gradebook to delete the column. And I'll show you how to do that. So in here, this assignment is linked to the gradebook. Let's say I no longer want to use it. I go in here and I reset to not graded. And I save this. And then what's going to happen is now when I go to Course Tools, to Grades, to my Manage Grades, it is no longer going to be filled in. And this will allow me to use more actions, delete, and it will allow me to delete the column. All right, so if you want to delete a column from Manage Grades, you have to go back to the source, Course Tools Assignments, and remove it from the gradebook. Same thing will be accomplished, like if it's an assignment that you no longer use at all and you want to delete it. If you do Course Tools Assignments Delete, it will be gone for good, and it will also remove the association. Next one, it's a myth. Deleting the gradebook column will delete the assignment and content. That's not true. It's only going to delete the column. You actually have to go back over to content to delete the assignment from that section. Now, what's going to happen, if you've ever seen those broken links within your content section, it says that there's an issue. Let's see if I've got one in here. I might have just created one by removing that one. Yeah, if I deleted one of these out completely, it would just say assignment and it would say broken link or something like that that tells you that it's an empty placeholder. So then I would go in here and I would delete that out, delete the topic. Now, reminder, this is really just a link from Course Tools Assignments. So you can delete the topic. You're not deleting out the whole assignment unless you choose the, like if I delete this out, I want to remove it from content, but I don't want to permanently delete it. This one is the button you don't want to push unless you 100% know you never want to look at this assignment again. Okay, but otherwise, this top one, all it's doing is removing the link from content. Okay, myth. Deleting the gradebook column will delete the assignment and Course Tools assignments. Nope, they're independent thinkers. So the gradebook column will remain or it can be deleted, but the assignments still exist. So you have the option to choose whether you want to save that assignment for a different semester or delete it entirely so that you no longer have to look at it. All right, this one's tricky. Myth. Changing the name of the gradebook column will also change the name in content and Course Tools assignments. This is wrong. Manage Grades is all about the gradebook column. So it works independently from everything else. So if you change the name at the gradebook column at Manage Grades, it is not going to flow up to the name of the assignment. And it won't flow over to content either. It's only going to change the name of the gradebook column. And then here's another myth. Point values changed in managed grades will flow to course tools assignments. Nope, that's not how it works. Managed grades, only about the gradebook column. You can change the gradebook column to whatever points you want. But if you ever want to know how to really mess up your gradebook, this is the problem. So you do not want to make any changes to point values from managed grades. Very few instances where you would want to do that. I know that it's an option, but if you want to, let's say this semester you want to change your assignments from 10 points to 20, you need to go back to course tools, assignments, and make those changes there. This right here can cause a lot of work for a lot of people, depending on when you do it, especially if you do this mid-semester. And it's not calculated. We've actually had to go back through with calculators and manually calculate scores for students because of this error right here. So again, recognizing managed grades, all about the gradebook columns, nothing else. All right, so the ripple effect of making changes. It's possible to change an existing assignment and not have the information flow as you want it to. For example, we were talking about different titles for one assignment. If you go to Course Tools and Assignment, you create a title for the assignment. That's one title. If you go to Grades, Manage Grades, and change the title from there, you could have two titles for the same assignment. If you use the short name in Manage Grades, you could have three titles for the same assignment. That could get confusing, especially if you're trying to change things up. So solution, it is 2 steps. You need to make the change at Course Tools Assignments, and then you also need to make the change at Manage Grades to make sure they match. I'm going to show you, let's see. All right, this is a good spot to show you. So what am I talking about? If I go into Manage Grades, all right, I only have one discussion that's linked right now. If I edit this column, what I can do is I can see this is the, in this case, it's a discussion. This is the discussion that is linked to this gradebook column. All right, so if something's not flowing properly, this is a way to go look for it. What I would do is if I changed it at Course Tools Assignments, I would go here and I would paste this in so that they match. That's the way to make sure that everything matches properly. You know, and I would have a different title for this, but that is just the click path for it, okay? So if you're looking to move them into the different categories, again, I'm editing the manage grades, and we could do that from this this page here. And yeah, this is where it talks about bonus. We're not going to go into that too much today, but just know it's an option. We have the office hours that can guide you through depending on how your gradebook is set up. All right, so changing the assignment titles, 2 different places you need to go. Ripple effect of categories. So categories, when we first got Brightspace, is so confusing. They had categories every which way. And the end result is categories in Course Tools assignments, it's just used to organize it. You know, if you had your research paper, you might want that all in its own category, or you might want, if you have multiple papers, you might want it by module or by chapter. It's just for organization for you to be able to look at it. Personally, I think like folders would have been a better use of words, but they use categories. But when we're in grades and manage grades, the categories are used for the weighted gradebook to calculate percentages and categories for the point-based gradebook to help organize it. So just recognizing that categories is an overly used term in Brightspace can be helpful. The most important category to keep track of is, again, the one in manage grades. Okay, so let's say you forgot everything I just told you and you make a change from manage grade from the manage grade page. What would it do? So the point values in manage grades will no longer match the assignment course tools point values. This scenario will likely cause major problems to your gradebook. The titles in the course tools assignments not matching the titles in manage grades. And then also, like if you made a change of hiding the gradebook column, that actually trumps everything else. So if you hide it in the gradebook column, you're hiding the assignment from the students too. So it's even if it's open in content, it's still hidden. So steps to clean up your gradebook. First step always, back it up if it's in the middle of a semester. Try to catch all of these things before the semester starts. I know it doesn't always work that way, but if you have to do anything mid-semester, first thing, back it up. There are times when you press delete, it's gone. So be aware of that, okay? Deleting assignments. I'm going to continue say backup is going to be number one step. Go to course tools, assignments to delete the assignment. And then you're going to need to go over to content and delete that link that was in there to share that assignment. And then you need to go to grades, manage grades to delete the gradebook column. So there's 3 steps that you need to complete in order to fully remove that assignment from your course. Deleting a gradebook column. Number 1, confirm no grades are entered. Confirm there's no student submissions that need to be graded. Then when you know that, go to course tools, assignments to edit the assignment. And then you can remove the point value and reset to ungraded. When you're done with that, now you can go to course tools, grades, manage grades, and delete the column. All right, so then this one, let's say you are switching an assignment. Let's say you're using, Oswego at its finest, but you're gonna change the title. You're reusing the assignment, but reworking it. The gradebook column title is no longer going to match, and in your how am I saying this right? You want to make sure that it's linked to the correct gradebook item. I was showing here how you can reset it to ungraded, adding or switching a gradebook column. Okay. This edit or link to existing, this allows you to link to an existing gradebook column. So let's say every semester you have to change it to some, to some capacity. You want to reuse an existing gradebook column. Maybe it says assignment 1, but assignment 1 changes every semester. But you want to reuse the gradebook column. You don't need a new column. You just need it linked to the new assignment you created for assignment 1. That's where this link to an existing grade item comes into play. So I'm not saying this the best way. You have assignment 1, it's in your grade book, it's as labeled as assignment 1. Next semester comes, you want to create a new assignment 1, but you want to use the existing grade book column. You unlink it, you unlink your old assignment from the grade book, and now using this option, edit or link to existing, you can now reuse the gradebook column that was there before. It's a little complicated. I can try to see if I can show that a little bit better and say that the best way. My apologies. Um, okay, well, these are the steps. Replacing an assignment. Go to Course Tools, Assignments to the old assignment, edit it, set to ungraded. That removes the association from the gradebook column. Now go to, this is actually suggesting to delete out the column and then create a new link. So one way or other, there's multiple ways to go about it. This is probably slightly safer, a little bit less confusing if you just create a new column. All right. I also know that linking to the correct gradebook column when you are creating an assignment is not exactly the most intuitive. When you edit or link to existing, you actually have the ability to choose a gradebook category. So if you do that, it will nest in properly where you want it for your weighted grade books. So that's one thing that commonly missed. They know to link it to the grade book, but it just kind of goes at the bottom of manage grades. And this is the opportunity for you to nest it properly in the correct category while you're creating the assignment. And then these are just a couple things I wanted to show you. Submission receipt to student that's not customized. If they submit an assignment, this is what they see in their email. If you send a class announcement sent to student email, this is what they see. Just thought I would take a moment to show you these things. And if you send an email through the roster using replacement strings with an image, this is what they see. Okay, so I know that was a lot of information, and I'm happy to go back through and clarify, because I understand I approach this from a different lens, but uh, I'm hoping that maybe, parts of it you can, I hope there's something that you were able to take from it. Yes, do you have a question?
So I'm going to apologize now because despite everything you said, I'm going to screw up my grade book and I'm going to be like emailing in a panic. And
No
Paul's
worries.
laughing because he knows it's true. But this has been really helpful. And every time I do this, I learn something new. So, weird question. I think I have a grade book perfected from a previous semester. I've just poured the entire course. It looks like on the back end, I can do a bulk edit of all of my assignment dates. Will that
Yep.
screw things up in my gradebook, or will that actually work the way I think it's going to work?
No, that shouldn't affect the grade book. Nope. You should be fine with that. Do you want to see me demo a couple of these situations? So for the visual side of things, how much were you able to follow along? I understand it's like I felt like I needed two screens going, but I can kind of, if I go in here and I create an assignment. And I click in here and I put this 10 points in, says in the grade book, but if I want to edit or link to an existing column, I choose this one here. And then I can choose my gradebook category and I can put it in under assignments. Now, if I wanted to replace one, all right, so let's say I have in my gradebook, it's listed as test assignment already, but I'm just creating a new test assignment. I could, if that column currently existed and was not being used, if the association column was not filled in, I would have been able to use this here. So it's good if you change things up. Example would be discussions, like maybe every semester you use a different discussion. You can either reuse the one that you have, like the discussion, course tools discussion, and reuse it, or you could do it this way, as long as you've removed the association of the old one first. All right, so let's go. We're going to create a new one. I created a category. Actually, I'm going to not put it in the category right now, just for the purpose of fixing the gradebook. And then I'm just going to save and close. It is in the gradebook, 10 points. All right. Oh, it saved it in there. So if I wanted to, let's just for fun, I'm going to change this to 20 points. All right, because I think this is a good idea. It's not a good idea, I'm just letting you know. If we go back to that course tools assignments, it's still 10. This is where the biggest issue happens. This is where the biggest problems happen. Same thing if I'm in here and I go in here and I think it's a great idea to rename these to say new. If I go back to course tools assignments, it didn't change. So that's why I say manage grades is completely independent from everything else. Let's put this test assignment up. I got to make it visible. I'm going to use existing activities to add that test assignment in. Okay, so there's my test assignment. I click on this here and I'm going to, I'll say old with this one. We're going to go to course tools assignments. It did change it there. But when we go back to grades, you'll see that this is still here. However, if we edit, you're going to see that it's linked to old. So that's where I do this copy paste so that everything matches properly. And now everything matches. If you have something that you don't think is like, let's say your discussions get screwed up and you're not sure if the gradebook column is representing the right assessment. Okay, so like if this said discussion 1, but up here it said discussion 2. Okay, so you've linked it to the wrong gradebook column. You'll be able to, by editing the gradebook column, you'll see that information here. This is more common for people that constantly, that change their assessments every semester. They have to go back through and manage grades and make sure that everything matches what was there. All right. What else can I show you? Anything else that you can think of that, did I clarify anything for you? A little bit, like recognizing that it's really a 3-step process. Start with course tools assignments. It's just the best. It's not that you can't do it differently, because you have these tools, you use them in different capacities, but like it's the best chance for the information to flow the correct way. And that's why the recommendation is to do it from here. And then when you're done creating it, get ready to share it with your students by going over to content and using existing activities to share it. And as long as you've included it in the grade book as you were creating your assignment, that information would flow already properly. Would you like to see anything else? Oh, there's something in the chat. Oh, good. Yeah, it's funny because I'm like, this is completely different than the way we approached it before, but I was really trying to, trying to approach it differently in an effort to helping thoroughly understand what the gradebook is all about, not necessarily, the point and click of just do this. Um, and honestly, this came from myself too, as learning the gradebook, the ins and outs of it, of how it functions. I do think like knowing this information, um, yes, a lot of information for sure. Hopefully you'll be able to reference it. I do have these slides. I can share them. I can put them inside the invite link. I'd like to work on them a little bit more before I share them out too much. But the biggest thing is just recognizing, some of the repercussions of this, of some of the actions that are made, and also an explanation, because we see a lot of empty columns in the gradebook. A lot of empty columns. And sometimes they're calculating towards things, like they don't know how to remove it. So they put the 0.01 in the gradebook column. And it's like you're giving them an extra point that they don't deserve. And it's easy to remove it as long as you go back to course tools to set it to ungraded. That's the piece that, people miss out. But I will say you can do a lot of damage if you were to reset something that was in a live course to ungraded, and you delete the column out and there's submissions in there. You are not getting that information back. So it is important, before you start messing with it too much, that you have a good idea of what's happening, when you make those choices. So that's why the backing up of the gradebook always very important. I did not show in here about creating the manual columns and what your options are. But if you go to new item, so I'm in manage grades and now it's new item. This is the numeric. This is the most common one. But if you wanted to use pass fail, so let's say that they uploaded an agreement that they need to upload for your course. You just want to give them 100 or nothing. You could do that. I also think that sometimes this text one could be helpful. We're actually using it for an orientation to identify the advisor for the orientation. So like there's some, and that column is hidden. It's not calculating towards anything, but there are times that it might be, helpful to add a comment that's there. If it is just a plain one here, let's say participation. And we're on this page, the main page of going to course tools grades. We can switch to, I have it in standard view. Spreadsheet view is the one that you want. It allows you to add all of their grades from this page. Or additionally, you could do, let's see, participation. Okay, there's my new participation one. If I enter grades from this area, I actually can give them some feedback. So like if this is participation and you only gave 7 out of 10, you could give some feedback right here. You don't need to create an assignment to do some of these things. Sorry, I'm not sure if you heard that. There's my dog. So that is kind of a nice feature too. If you wanted to, if there's something you need to share with them that isn't necessarily something that they hand in, you want to create a gradebook column for them and then just give them some feedback. This is the way to go about that. What else? I could show you in here. I don't know if you've ever used this event log. It probably popped up into another screen, but it shows, can you see it or no? No. So it just shows that on January 15th, I gave 10 out of 10 for participation at 1:52 a.m. and January 15th, 1:53 a.m. Apparently I was up early or late. I took that grade away. So it gives an event log of what's happened for that student as far as grades go. So if there's ever an issue that you're like, did my grade book just get messed up? This event log would show you that something's been changed and what time it happened. All right, it will only help you with the association ones. If you delete out a participation column that does not have, that's not linked to an assignment, test, or quiz, or a discussion or quiz, that's gone and it's gone for good. All right. That's all I have. I think that was more than enough, but hopefully, as you're working through it, and if you think of a different way that I should be sharing this information, or if you do have questions about it, I am interested in knowing, because I know that, truth be told, a lot of people, they make the grade book harder than it needs to be. And it's just because of not having this next level of understanding of how it actually is functioning, and save themselves time, save them, the students, some headaches, all that kind of stuff, by taking the extra few minutes to kind of wrap your head around how that actually works. But hopefully this gives you a little bit more of that background in knowing that information. Okay. Yeah, and maybe I can slow it down, because I mentioned at this one being more of an advanced session, but maybe for new faculty, like, to slow it down one more level, and just point blank say, don't fix it, but do it this way, so that at least your best chance of success happens the first time around. I could remove the fixing component of this. I'm open to ideas. Okay, very good. Oh, no worries. We definitely are very willing to assist. The nice thing about the grade book now is we don't get, Doug and I have a very good understanding of it. Very rarely can you trump us or, confuse us, I should say. We usually can figure it out pretty quickly. But yeah, anything you can do to have it set up before the class starts is definitely the best way to go about it. So stopping in at our office hours, Mondays and Thursdays from 1 to 3. You do not need an appointment. You just stop in, show us your managed grade screen. We'll tell you if it looks right, and we'll ask the questions if we need to. We have a lot of people that just stop in and say, hey, does this look right? And or can you show me how to do this? And then they leave, and then they come back 20 minutes later and they're like, did I do it right? And that's totally fine, because everybody's time is valuable. Like it's if we can help you in that time, if you can plan to work on your coursework, creating new things, trying new things out in that 1 to 3 block. We have a lot of people that come back and forth, work on it for a while and say, all right, does this look right? So totally fine with that. All right. All right, I think that's it.